Hello, Maria.
Hi, Zach. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to another episode of TBI, TMI.
We're locking in
we
the name.
yeah, we did a lot of testing in the markets, and that seemed to be the version that our most trusted listeners selected. So, welcome, listeners, to another episode. We have with us, as always, our wonderful Maria, who is a counselor specializing in traumatic brain injuries and is a traumatic brain injury survivor herself. My name is Zach. I am a CPA and a traumatic brain injury survivor as well. And we have a very special guest today
Coming on in a bit,
coming on momentarily. His name is Andy Williamson,
and we'll tell you more about
and
it when he gets
we'll
here.
tell you more about it. But we were kind of talking in our little pre-pro meeting about what kind of stuff we're going to talk to Andy about. And, one subject that is fairly recent is kind of feeling fatigued at work and maybe a little overwhelmed by all the stimuli from multiple coworkers and things happening, you know, to be more specific for me, like where there's like this convergence of feeling overwhelmed and sort of out of sorts, like on a late Thursday afternoon or something, seems to be kind of the day and time that life gets difficult at work from a long work week, having been trying to just manage and mask and do my best
Yeah.
and be respectful, a good coworker, but there's just things that take place at work that, for anybody can be overwhelming, but I think are
Totally.
particularly difficult with a brain injury because it feels a little bit of that sort of carousel roller coaster feel. And
Yeah.
how do you ground yourself and how do you stay in your power and be assertive and authentic and take care of yourself while also continuing to be a good coworker. I think there's
Yeah.
just kind of some of the things that I'm interested in talking to Andy about, other than the
Yeah.
fact that he's from the UK and lives in Scotland, and I just want to know if he's a Belle and Sebastian fan, which I will ask him.
I think, one thing, Zach, the masking component of this feels really huge. That, like, you have an invisible disability. And so when you are working with coworkers who may or may not know about your disability, there is an element of this is our first time having a guest. I'm just seeing if this is him. Okay, he's probably still coming in. There's an element of like kind of hurting yourself by saying or doing something because you are fatigued or it's sort of looking like anger. And then from there, you now are embarrassed that you did whatever behavior or action that is.
Totally.
Also, just as a side note, I don't know if our listeners have ever, if some people have kids, which is a thing we should definitely talk about, but I'm scrambling to like do this podcast and I'm looking at my co-host who's very cool, but I made him one time not use this space because there's so much chaos behind him, but I'm feeling cool. I'm feeling calm.
You're okay.
And we're going to the
I have
dentist.
a full house, so I
We
can't
have a full
go to
house.
my cool, quiet, calm room with a white background. Sorry.
But we're going to the dentist right after this, and of course they literally found the syrup and like dumped it on their waffles, and it's just like, of
Everywhere.
course this would be the day. Yeah, it's sticky everywhere in this house, and I just ran out of here briefly to like get them in. But anyway, just a
Ay, ay,
bummer
ay.
in the summer. Yeah, I'm just double checking that our buddy's not waiting or something, because can you see where it shows like one more person, or can only I see that?
I don't see that, but your image just got grainy. But this is some world-class podcasting, folks.
Here,
You're on the edge
Andy
of your
is calling
seats.
in for a question answer. I'm here.
Oh, sweet.
There he is.
Hello.
There's boy. Hey, two
Hi.
baldies. Two baldies and a blondie. Wow.
How's it going? Yeah, new name for the podcast. How's it going?
Great. We were just talking about you, and we'd love to invite our listeners who can't see you to get a little sight check. So, actually, my two friends basically look like twins. They are Andy, coming from Europe, is wearing a beautiful polo with buttons. I can see one of the buttons, it looks black. He has got a bald head, and this guy is wearing headphones and has a delicious background that is just pictures, very calming to the eyes, unlike Zachary.
Andy, nice to meet you.
You too, Zach. How's it going, mate?
Thanks for coming on, joining our listeners. We're super excited to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to give you a brief intro. You're the founder of Welcome Brain, and you specialize in education and mental health innovation, correct?
That's right. Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. And I heard your introductions. I was sort of lurking in the background trying to get this to work, so I heard your introductions.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Well, we have talked a little about the kind of work you do, but we'd love for you to kind of either give us a brief snap of what it looks like when you're in an organization or workplace environment, and how you kind of got this idea, what kind of planted the seed.
Yes, well, I'll answer those in reverse order if that's okay with you, because I think it tells a sort of a clearer story. So,
I love that.
Maria, we should probably declare that we actually do know one another. We are related.
I was trying to hide that. I was trying to be like this big fancy European is here, and I
Yeah.
don't know how I found him. I'm just that
Yeah,
good.
I'm just a mysterious European aristocrat. So, yeah.
I was
So,
trying to plant a fissure in the family by saying you're married to Maria's favorite cousin, but
okay.
He is one of my favorites for sure.
I'll pass that on, and that will almost certainly start a fissure. So yeah, you've done everything you set out to achieve. Yeah, so the reason for saying that is that I lived in Seattle for about 5 years, from 2015 to 2020. And
He
while I
means
was,
that he's married to my brilliant cousin, brilliant, gorgeous, mushroom-haired Margaret Kay. She's got the personality of a elephant
shouldn't have
mixed
said
with, a housewife mixed with, and housewife, I mean real housewife of New York. So I mean sass, frass, wit. She's out of this world. And the haircut is just the mushroom on top.
well, that was verbatim what my wedding vows said. So yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so I lived with Margaret and briefly with Maria. Actually, you lived in the same apartment as us in Seattle. And while I was there, I set up an education business that was working to support students who had, who were neurodivergent or who had any sort of special educational needs. And that just grew, and that was really providing a need, particularly as we went into the pandemic. There was a lot of additional needs around sort of online learning. So it grew from there, and I also briefly co-ran a mental health private practice in Seattle as well, aimed at teens and young people. And since I moved back, I sold both of those businesses, but it seemed to me that there was a big sort of obvious next step, which was to support adults who were neurodivergent. Because so often we understand that there need to be accommodations or adjustments for young people at school. Students who are dyslexic or have ADHD or something like that, they get extra time in their SATs or whatever. We understand that as a society. But then people get into the world of work and there's just no adjustments or accommodations like that. There's sort of this implicit argument that, okay, by the time you're, an adult, you should have grown out of these things and you shouldn't need them anymore. And it's your turn to adjust to the world rather than the other way around. So we apply the social model for school-age children and then the medical model for working-age adults. And it seems like that doesn't make sense. So I set up Welcome Brain. I'm here in Edinburgh, in not so sunny Scotland. And we work with organizations to help them become neuro-inclusive.
I love that.
Neuro-inclusive being the second step. So you have to be neurodiverse first, and then you become neuro-inclusive. So the nirvana at the end of it is to become a neuro-inclusive organization. And a lot of what we do actually on the organizational side is sort of structural. So we help organizations get better at hiring, make sure the hiring processes are neuro-inclusive. They're better at retention. They get the most out of their employees because their employees are happy and have adjustments. They thrive rather than just survive in the workplace. So I actually, there's a few sort of elements of what we do that is just sort of ruthless capitalism, because we say to organizations, this is a bottom line issue. Being neuro-inclusive is better for your business. It's expensive to have a high staff turnover. It's expensive to miss out on really talented people because you're not neuro-inclusive. So this is something that every business who's searching for a competitive advantage should investigate. And there are big businesses who are doing this. Microsoft and EY and SAP and Walmart, they're all doing these things about neuro-inclusion. So we just say it should be, taken as read. And every change you make that improves neuro-inclusion in an organization improves neurotypical people's experience as well. So it's not sort of like a sacrificial thing, it's just making a better organization. And that's where we're at now. And so when we work with organizations, we work with them on a whole host of things, from workshops and trainings to improving their policy documents to, really getting in there, improving the work environment, the way the office is laid out. I mean, I know that you two can probably speak more about that, but the office environment, physically being in an office space, can be really distracting and daunting. And difficult to operate within. So there's nothing we don't do with businesses. Neuro-inclusion is quite a sort of broad church, a big umbrella to operate into. But in a nutshell, what we do is we help organizations get better. And I think most of what we actually do is talk to neurotypical people about how to understand and manage neurodivergent people better.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's such a great, hook to what we were speaking to before you popped on of like, don't bother me. Like after 2, don't bother me. When you talk to me, it feels like an interruption and I want to scratch your eyes out, but also now I forgot what I was doing and I wasted my brain dollars or spoons, interacting with you. So everyone's losing here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and from a business perspective, that's costing money if you've got employees who aren't working productively. So again, I ran a business in America, so I think so broadly it works the same way, but we always say to organizations, the way that you treat your employees is worse than the way that you treat your contractors. So a lot of businesses contract out, to independent contractors, projects and things like that. And the way they contract stuff out to sort of 1099 people is they say, okay, here's your project we want you to complete for us. Okay, here's the ultimate deadline 6 weeks down the line or whatever. We don't care how you get there. Just, get the project done to these sort of standards. Do whatever you want. So that's very much outcome focused. But then when they work with their employees, they're very much process focused. Here's the office dress code. Here's the code of conduct. This is when you have to clock in and clock out. So they don't reflect people's sort of individual ways of working, like don't talk to me after 2:00 or, I've got kids to pick up or my kid's off sick or whatever. So they don't respect and reflect those things. So actually they treat their contractors who are outside the organization better and more respectfully than they do their employees, which is the wrong way around. And it's the difference between outcome focused and process focused approaches.
Interesting, because it sort of mirrors like how people treat family members and then like strangers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like we're our worst selves to the people we know the best or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, everyone talks about a corporate family, so I guess that applies in the same way, right?
Yeah.
So if you're zooming in a bit, and I guess this may or may not fall under the umbrella of what you look at, but masking is such a huge thing. There are a lot of clients I work with that are neurodivergent, a lot brain injury, but a lot of people who perhaps have a more typical job, have ADHD or autistic, and they are maybe not telling their employers at any point, even after several years, about their neurodivergence out of fear or thinking that might be not helpful and in fact hurtful, but it causes a lot of problems. However, I feel like I can't be confident telling them, no, out yourself, because what if? So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that and if that's something you're working on or working with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the ultimate goal of a neuro-inclusive environment is actually to get post-disclosure. So all of the accommodations and adjustments are available to everybody in the organization without having to ask for them. So you don't have to disclose for them. You don't have to disclose them. And yeah, I do get it totally that sort of disclosing that you are neurodivergent is a really daunting thing. And I definitely think still it can backfire within an organization. And yeah, on the issue of masking, I mean that's a finite resource that you're using when you are masking. So that's why you get to burn out so quickly, and eventually you can't mask. And again, when we're working with organizations, and particularly neurotypical managers, we say that the purpose of masking is actually to protect neurotypical people. It's not to protect the neurodivergent individual. It's that you interact with them in a way that you think that they want to interact. So often, if you can create a culture as a manager where neurodivergent people are sort of supported and it's a safe psychological space, then you reduce the need for masking and you just reduce that emotional energy. But I mean, so often when we're working training organizations is we talk about that neurodivergent people are neurodivergent 5 to 9, not just 9 to 5. So people show up at work and they've done the commute, they've been on public transport, whatever.
That's right.
They've been through some quite sort of high intensity overstimulation situations before they even get to work. So then they have to put on their work mask on top of that. So it's just it's energy, it's a finite resource, and this is how you're not managing people.
I'm curious about, because we're not wearing a cast or a brace or anything like that, and so how do you get through to these neurotypical managers or coworkers and say, because I think that's part of the issue, I think, Maria, that you and I face in everyday life is like, we don't want to have a sign at all times being like, I had a brain injury, give me an extra second, So like, what kind of stuff do you do that maybe we can apply and our listeners can apply to like communicating with neurotypical people about, hey, like, just give me an extra second, to simplify?
Yeah. Well, I mean, communication is exactly right. That's at the heart of it, really. And there's a great psychologist whose name I cannot remember right now, talks about it as the double empathy problem. That effectively,
we'll put it in the notes, and I'll link it up here.
Yeah, perfect.
Double empathy problem.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is like being back at college again. I can't remember exactly who said it, but it sounded good, and I'll find it later. But the double empathy problem, and it's basically the idea that neurotypical people and neurodivergent people speak different languages, and ultimately communication across that barrier is the source of a lot of the conflict. And what's really funny is when we run training sessions or workshops with managers about communication, and we're talking about emails, for example. Okay, and this is potentially going to sound very British because I'm going to use British terminology, but you say, okay, if you could get that work to me by the end of today, that would be great. We say, well, what does that actually mean? Does it have to be done by the end of today? Would it just be good if it was done by the end of today, but tomorrow's okay? And I think, again, this is a British thing, so British people tend to be a little bit more wishy-washy in their language because we have a sort of culture of politeness around what we do. Maybe you Americans are much more direct, but whenever we're running these exercises about effective communication and clarity of communication, we always come to the conclusion that neurodivergent people are better at communicating with their directness than the sort of the neurotypical way that we neurotypical people tend to write emails. So I'm not sure this is tangible advice for neurodivergent people, but hopefully it's tangible advice for neurotypical people is be clear in the way that you communicate. And I was researching for a talk I'm giving about AI tools, but there's a lot of really cool AI tools that you can use now to help moderate and change the tone of your communication. So, even, I don't know how some organizations don't like this, but running your emails through ChatGPT, or there are other AI tools, in-house AI tools that you can use to modulate the tone and just say, hey, is this clear? Or you can do it the other way. Someone sent me an email. Can you rephrase this and tell me exactly what this email means?
I like that.
But using it almost like a translation app, because, we do have this double empathy issue going on. So, I mean, the ultimate kind of philosophical goal of how do we do this where people aren't wearing a cast but we can still give them access to it is about respecting people as individuals within an organization and saying, I don't care about how you get there. You're great at what you do. I'm going to give you the conditions you need to succeed. So Maria, if you're rubbish after 2 p.m., you can come in to work at whatever time you want in the morning. As long as you're hitting these targets, I'm happy with that. Do what you need to do.
And there have been times that I did ask for that. When I had a job working in a rehab facility, I would get there at 6:30 in the morning instead of all of my coworkers that got there at 9, but I would leave at 3, or something like that. I wanted to just go back to this kind of full circle moment that I'm having in this discussion, because there was a moment when you said, disclosing could backfire, and I understand that. And I just felt like not only choked and my chest getting tight, and like basically my instinct was to stop listening because it was scary. And I think for a lot of our listeners, they're in that same boat where, like, if I hear danger, like this could backfire, and I kind of can do this job by not disclosing, then I'm not. And I loved, Andy, that you brought it back to this idea of double empathy, because there's something so spectacular about, we don't have to feel so alone in this. There might be an element too of kind of taking your time to pick your allies. And when you think about the tools or the products that you're providing to organizations, Andy, perhaps for someone that doesn't have a person like you in their organization, those are things that they could be bringing for themselves, right? So I'm hearing first the tool of the AI to kind of understand more clearly what an email actually means, instead of, like I'm saying, getting my feelings hurt because I'm maybe hearing this has to be done by the end of the day, because it's very black and white in my mind, backfire versus good. And so I'm curious if there are any other just sort of tools for someone that might not have your organization in their back corner. If there's something else, like I'm seeing you wear headphones. I know a lot of people do that. Stuff like that you would just say our listeners might benefit from having if their organization hasn't taken the time to have a company like you come in and sort of make those adjustments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of tools, and I promise you this is not an advert break, but there's one that I definitely recommend that is designed specifically for neurodivergent people, and it's a whole suite of things, but it's called Goblin. If you search Goblin AI, again, I can put the link in the chat later, but they have an amazing range of tools around. If it's AI, so you can say, well, this is the task I have to complete. You can brain dump. It has a section where you can just brain dump, and it breaks it down into coherent things on a to-do list and creates your to-do list for you. And you can make it estimate how long each task will take, and prioritize the tasks for you. So it does a whole range of things. They have a consultant, so you can ask it a question and it'll give you pros and cons. So if you're struggling with that kind of decision-making process, it can help you. Again, there's a judge section, so you can put in, okay, this is the email I received. How should I interpret that email? And you can do it reverse as well. So they have a whole suite of things. It's all available for free as well. And it's absolutely fantastic. So I think it's specifically designed for mostly for ADHD and autism, but I mean for everybody really. I think also neurotypical people. It's a really useful suite of tools, and that's free. Yeah, so
And just
really
as a
recommend that.
side note for our listeners, because this is for traumatic brain injury, but like we are in that same camp. I have been to many a conference and they really spell it out. And so I think that that's difficult because a lot of times as a culture, we are putting ADHD, autism under the umbrella of neurodivergent folks. And in fact, brain injury, traumatic brain injury is absolutely a part of that family. So I just want to make sure our listeners are knowing everything Andy is talking about is really for all of us in the brain injury community.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think these are useful for everybody, neurotypical people as well. There's
Right.
none of these changes are sort of diminishing for anybody, I think. So yeah, absolutely everybody
And I feel
benefits from
lucky
these.
because now forevermore, when I think of Goblin app, I'm going to just see you coming out from under a bridge like a little goblin.
Well, I feel unlucky now. I wish I hadn't said that, but we just finished the Harry Potter movies last night as well with the kids. So yeah, I see those goblins are quite scary, really.
We don't look anything like those goblins.
No, exactly.
Well, I'm
Exactly.
kind of curious. Like, I understand the software tools, but I do kind of want to come back to communication and like connect. I feel like, one of the things we try to talk about is just connecting with ourselves and people. and it coming back to like communicating with people, maybe like one-to-one, face-to-face, and those kind of, visual cues of people and understanding people, and having the empathy directly, because I guess there's a few bells going off in my head in terms of using like AI. So like not turning away from that human person that you're trying to interact with and understand, turning away, sort of cramming for some sort of like explanation for how to do the best thing possible. And I think it kind of comes back to the black and white thinking of like, well, we delude ourselves into thinking there's a right way to do it or a wrong way. We're all like theoretically using our best skills and trying to get to a collective goal. This is like a naive general term, like, view of the world. And maybe I'm just being a hippie here, but it's like, can we use tools that maybe are like a hug? I don't know, like what are the kind of more interactive, in the same energy space kind of things that maybe we could use to sort of connect people, neurotypical, neurodivergent people,
Mm-hmm.
neuro-inclusive environments? Like, are any of those kind of team building exercises a part of your curriculum?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna answer a question with a question because you two are the experts on this. I mean, what do you two think? I mean, how can you replicate these things, like sort of emotionally?
That's why you're here, man.
Okay. Well, I mean, are there things that you've experienced that have worked for you?
Well, I mean, nothing that comes right to the top of my head, and I think it's something that Maria and I talk like kind of more off the air than on, is this sort of masking and like trying to maintain. I work in an environment that like people are fairly empathetic, and they're like trying to make the environment a better place, but I am still very hesitant to bring up my brain injury. And there's like a standing meeting on Thursday afternoons with leadership, which I'm a part of. And I'm like, can we not do Thursday afternoons? Like, I am so tired. I can barely focus. Uh, like, this isn't setting me up for success. And they're kind people, but I'm like, I don't want to tell them any of these things. So I don't. Um, so I mean, I wouldn't consider myself the expert in the way that Maria is. More just like I had a brain injury and I'm a working professional maintaining day to day. Like, I'm an accountant. I do very technical things. Since my brain injury, I switch numbers around,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
which is not great, and I probably shouldn't be advertising this. but but the tool that I use there is I just like quadruple check it. So I think in effect, it's made me a better accountant because I have to sort of take a step back at the work that I'm doing and sort of revisit that work at a slower pace, which, is a time suck. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of getting off base here because I'm not really providing any sort of answers for any of our listeners because, yeah, I'm just trying to figure it out too, I guess.
Well, and I think, Zach, you're quite young in your brain injury, right? You've only had the injury 4 years ago. And so I think there is a lot of growth that happens. One thing I'm thinking that's a little off the topic that you're saying, but you're working full time. It's quite rare for me to meet a brain injury survivor that works full time. I don't know that I've ever worked full time post injury. I don't know that most folks with traumatic brain injury have. And in fact, that's kind of a segue into something I think is really important as well. But if there's anything else to go with his, please pop in.
Well, was that what I would say? And I'm not saying this is what you should do or shouldn't do, but I think what would be very clear, for example, with that Thursday standing meeting, is there are probably other people in your organization that feel the same way.
Totally.
I mean, this is what I was saying. Neurodivergent people, 20% of the population, so 1 in 5, right? Is neurodivergent people already, they walk amongst us, right? They exist in the organization. So if you were to raise objections around this meeting not being ideal, there would probably be people in your organization that would agree with that. So, I mean, I know it's difficult to be the first one to speak always, and I don't know about the culture of your organization, but from an organizational perspective, this is why it's important to create the psychological safety, because once you do it, people start to voice these concerns. And then you very quickly get to a situation where people are saying, well, actually, this doesn't work at all. And you get to sort of a much better setup very, very quickly. If you can create that psychological safety where people like you can raise those legitimate concerns. Yeah, I mean, again, that's not useful on an individual level. That's an organizational level. But
No, I think you're right. I think it kind of comes back to like what Marie and I talk about a lot is like not feeling so alone. And I think
absolutely.
it's like feeling isolated in this sort of headspace and having that courage to speak up and maybe that's part of it too is it's just taking that step forward into that unknown is very difficult.
I mean, I've been in hundreds of meetings where I feel like I'm the only one who thinks this sort of left field thing, and you just find out afterwards. You chat to people, or you're messaging in the side chat, and you find that people agree with you. So it's very rare that you truly sort of are alone in these thoughts.
Yeah.
But then actually voicing them is a different threshold to cross, right?
Totally, yeah.
You're just alone in the first step. And really, it sounds a lot like a boundary, which is so important and so of our times. Like, I feel like people are really starting to acknowledge boundaries in little ways and in big. So, the boundary is, I'm really struggling at these meetings. Can we change the day or the time? I want to go back to my question, of course. So a lot of folks, I imagine, our listeners, and some I know, are severe traumatic brain injury survivors. And so of that population that I am also part of, it's about 80% remain on disability post-injury. And so because of that, there's a lot of lack of community, a ton of isolation. And so if there were something that you could kind of think about as far as sort of taking a step, knowing that you are different, that your brain is quite different. I love this idea that even those that maybe are neurotypical are having the same struggles. We learned a lot about that, like you've mentioned, in the pandemic with anxieties and things like that are quite heightened as a symptom of brain injury. But again, kind of, I like this idea of ChatGPT in the internet world or the computer world, but in real life, physical body, I'm stepping out of my safe home and trying to be a part of a community, whether that's the library or going into a restaurant, and the feeling of being around other people and the pressure to hurry up, the pressure to word find, the pressure to make a decision. Those are quite complex challenges that those with severe traumatic brain injury live with every single day. Is there anything, I'm kind of like maybe script writing before you go, I don't know, anything you could think of that you, and I know this isn't exactly your wheelhouse, but I just know how smart you are, so I want to hear your ideas.
Oh, you set me up. I was gonna not answer that, but now I have to. I'm a sucker for a compliment.
He went to Oxford.
So generally, I would say that the advice that I would give to people in that situation is to say that remember that people aren't scrutinizing you as much as you're scrutinizing yourself. Like you said,
Beautiful.
In the library or the coffee shop or something, if you're stumbling over your order or you're struggling to get the change out of your pocket or whatever it may be, most people aren't thinking about that. Most people are looking at their phones. They're preoccupied with their own internal struggles. So everybody has main character syndrome. They think that everybody's watching them and sort of analyzing them and up in their business. But actually, most people aren't. I mean, just think about your own experience. I mean, it's
that's gorgeous. I love that. That's baby gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
you for the opportunity to answer the question.
No, I think that's so helpful. And, I think you are such a wealth of knowledge. And again, this empathy, I think that's fantastic, because where one with a really severe brain injury might feel so alone and the world is all going along and people get it and I don't. Just that little snip you mentioned of like, no, like people are paying attention to themselves. and there's a lot more sort of gentleness perhaps in the world, but we just have to open our eyes and believe that. And I think that way of thinking is difficult to find when you have a head injury, because you just feel like I was once normal and cool and good and easy, and now everything is difficult and I'm slow and I can't figure it out and I can't find the word and it's bothering everyone. So to know, no, people are on their own journey, and we can be too.
It's so interesting because there's a lot, particularly in the UK, of adult diagnoses of neurodivergence. So people get the adult diagnosis of autism, for example, and they do this thing in reverse because they have to re-examine their own life, particularly their own time at school or their own childhood or adolescence, and they're saying, well, actually, so I wasn't just like the dumb kid at school. I actually, had this challenge or this challenge. So they're going through that same process in reverse, but which is no less traumatic. But it's all around sort of identifying yourself, who you are, and how you interact with the world. It's absolutely fascinating. And just when you hear these stories, you just think, how can you not be empathetic about this whole thing?
Yeah. Well, it speaks to a little that maybe, we're kind of an arrogant species, but we're doing quite wrong.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, it has been such a delight to
Wait,
have
I have
you
one more
here.
question. It's totally off subject, and it's just because I love Scotland,
and you have about 2 minutes to answer because I'm going to the dentist.
I just want to know if Belle and Sebastian is as big in Scotland as they are in my mind and my wife's mind, and we go see them as many times as possible. And if I'm just like, oh, you like the equivalent of the Jonas Brothers of Scotland.
I think that they are definitely more famous in America than they are in Scotland. They're not. People like them here, but it's only been in America that people have talked to me about Belle and Sebastian. So
really, okay,
yeah,
good.
And embarrassingly, I don't know that much about them. But yeah, so I don't know if that burst your bubble or not.
The whole time I thought he was talking about a soccer team, but it's music. I feel like every time I'm around Andy, people are asking about soccer. Anywho.
Well, wait, though. The lead singer of the band, had a diagnosis, and, he has a neurodivergent issue, and wrote a book, many years later, recently, of, all of his struggles and sort of these sort of things of, feeling like I'm not normal, I'm weird, I'm crazy, everybody else is normal and fine, and life is easy for them, but not for me. And so that's another reason I think I connect to the music. And so I'm just going to try to bombard them. And I will stop now because I feel like we're so grateful for your time, Andy, and we would love to have you back because I feel like we just scratched the surface, and it really helps to have two balds against one blonde in the conversation.
I'll tell you a secret as well. Maria's actually married to a bald man as well, so she likes the bald men's company.
I'm just showing off my hair. I don't have face anymore.
You have hair privilege.
Well, I will do my little end of the podcast spiel now and say that we are excited to be sharing these conversations with you. We're going to be covering a new topic related to TBIs each week, going over listener submitted calls, talking to wonderful people like Andy, and we will be releasing episodes every Tuesday. So please subscribe and make sure you don't miss any of these fun but important conversations. And this podcast content is for informational and entertainment purposes only, not professional advice. And we are not liable for how our lovely listeners use this information. If you need more support, please contact a therapist or medical provider. If you are having suicidal thoughts, please text 988.
And that's for 988 if you're in the United States.
In the United States, yeah. So I will spin to a more happy subject and say thank you again, Andy, for being in Maria's family. I think that's wonderful of you to do. I know I have a very good friend who's also in Maria's family, and it has made his life exponentially better. And your expertise and knowledge, we're so grateful for you to share it with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
All right. Take care, everyone. Be good to your brain. Give it a hug.
Yeah. Bye.